Hmm? Inside.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Please, as you come in, can you mute your mic? Can you mute your mic? It's a large class. We don't want people talking. Only the lecturer should be talking. So please mute your mic. And as you come in, ensure that you are properly named. I don't want to see Infinix, XS, whatever. Put your name, your proper name, and mute yourself. So we start. So good morning once again, and welcome to the introductory class. The course is Introduction to Sociology. And this morning we are going to start by looking at definitions and the scope of sociology. So I'm expecting that by the end of this class, you'll be able to define sociology. You'll also be able to analyze its scope, and you would have a good understanding of the historical context, particularly the influence of the industrial and political revolutions. It promises to be an interesting class if we all remain muted and will pay attention. So my name is Fumi Bameke. I am the first lecturer to take this course. I'm a professor of sociology from the Department of Sociology. We'll have a number of other lecturers who will take this course. The class rep of accounting has been made a co-host, and it can actually allow those in the waiting room to come in. But I'm also asking again that if you do not mute, you'll be thrown out of the class. Please mute your mic. I can still hear your voices. Thank you. So we're starting this morning, and I want you to consider a few questions. Or let's look at some headlines from some newspapers. So the first one says, armed men kidnap 13 women in Nigeria's latest abduction. And that's from Al Jazeera. The next one says, student sentenced to death for his girlfriend's murder. That's from the University World News. Then another says, family seeks protection over Ikate land amidst demolition. That is from the news, the Nation's newspaper. Now, considering these newspaper headlines, and we have many more, you will see that the issues that are being considered range over a number of fields. You have another one that says older people around the world at higher risk of abuse. That's from HelpAge International. A cry from the gutter, examining the crisis of child abandonment. That's from Champion newspaper. And Israel strikes Palestinian refugees camp in Lebanon. That's from CNN. Now, these various newspaper headlines or news items that we have considered actually would tell you that sociology is a science with a diverse subject matter, because all of these topics are of interest to sociologists. They are of sociological interest. We have looked at older people, how they can be subjected to abuse. We have looked at babies, how they can be abandoned. We have looked at wars. We have also mentioned crime, how somebody can kill another person. So all of these that we have looked at, these subject matters are of interest to sociology. So they are all of sociological interest. So we're going somewhere. We're trying to look at the subject matter of sociology. You will remember that I said that at the end of this course, we'll be able to understand what sociology is, the subject matter, and the scope. So all that we have mentioned, they all come under the subject matter of sociology. That tells us immediately that the subject matter of sociology is diverse. So is a science of society with a diverse subject matter. We have also seen that sociology can study social life in its entirety, because we have looked virtually at entirety of society. We have mentioned issues of war, we have mentioned issues of family, we have mentioned issues pertaining to the elderly, mentioned those pertaining to young people in school, in the university, babies, etc. So sociology can look at the entire social life using scientific methods. And the beauty is that when it looks at these entire social life, it also brings in methods, knowledge from various disciplines. So all social behavior, all social relationships can be explained through sociology. So we say that it can be explained wearing sociological lenses. So the sociologist has the capacity to look at the entire social life, to look at all parts of social life. So sociology actually covers the entire array of human behavior. Why you see that when you look at some disciplines, they can take one aspect of human behavior that they are considering. But when you look at sociology as a whole, sociology actually considers the entire, all the aspects of human behavior. So some disciplines will look at, one part of human behavior or the other. But sociology would actually look at the entire gamut of human behavior, all aspects of the entire array of human behavior. So it is to be right for you to say that the entire social world is actually the sociologist's laboratory, because the sociologist has the capacity to look at any area, of human endeavor that you want to consider. So the sociologist can look at the entire social world, just as scientists who go into their specific laboratories. So we say that for the sociologist, the entire social world is the laboratory in which the sociologist would work.
Share later before you go back.
So now that we've given kind of overview of the areas in which the sociologist is interested, we'll also try to consider some definitions. And the idea of considering these definitions is such that we might be able to have more detailed idea of how people have perceived sociology, how they have defined sociology, how has it been defined over time, how do we define it? So the first one we are considering says sociology is a social science that studies human societies, their interactions, and the processes that preserve and change them. It studies human societies, their interactions, and the processes that preserve and change them. How does it do this? He does this by examining the dynamics of the constituent parts of societies, such as institutions, communities, populations, and gender, racial or age groups. So you can find these definitions at the place indicated. It's from the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's one of the definitions. We're going to consider a number of other definitions. We're also going to consider definitions from authors and scholars in Nigeria, but this is one main definition that gives you an overview of how sociology studies human society, studies how human beings interact and how they try to preserve their societies and the changes, all the dynamics, that happens in society by looking at those constituent parts of society. I'll take another definition. And this time we're looking at sociology as the study of social life, social change, and the social causes and consequences of human behavior. So for those who got in earlier, you will remember that the newspaper headlines that I mentioned, that I gave us, we're all talking about human beings in different settings. It is talking about conflict or war, it's talking about land, elderly, young people, etc. So it's actually talking about several things. So by now you should have that understanding that when you're talking about sociology, you're talking about a discipline that studies social life, social change, and the social causes and consequences of human behavior. So that's another definition for us. We'll take yet another definition, and it says that sociology, in a systematic manner, that discipline that studies social behavior of individuals. It studies the working of social groups, organizations, cultures, and their influence on individual and group behavior. So you can see what is resonating social behavior, whether you're talking about individuals or you're talking about groups, could be small groups, large groups, you're talking about organizations or cultures, and how this behavior, would influence individuals and influence group behavior. So it has to do with a lot of interaction. That is what sociology studies. Then lastly, we'll look at a set of definitions from around us here. So these definitions, I've just tried to put them together as more definitions, but you can see the sources of the definitions. For example, sociology is said to be concerned with the maintenance of societal order through the inculcation of rules of behavior, in members of the society. This definition by Olusoya and Olurode, similar to all the other definitions we have considered. But the crux of this definition is that sociologists are concerned with the maintenance of societal order. And how do sociologists seek to maintain societal order? They believe that in society, you must inculcate the rules of behavior. Through the process of socialization, you inculcate the rules of behavior in human beings who are members of that society. So that's the concern, that's looking at it from that perspective of maintaining societal order. Then you find another definition that says that sociology is actually the study of human interactions and the organization of social institutions. This definition is by Onegu Otite, also another Nigerian scholar. So you find definitions. We started from across the globe. We can look at definitions that have survived centuries, and we look at more current definitions. So to go back to some older definitions that have been considered over time, we look at sociology as the scientific study of society, and I think that is even the simplest so far. The sociology as a scientific study of societies. So if you like to say human societies, but definitely we're talking about human society. So sociology, the scientific study of society, and that's a simple definition by Auguste Comte. We have another one saying that sociology is the study of social action, and this is by Max Weber. These are scholars. We're going to hear their names as we go on. So let me just take another one more. The last definition here says sociology is the study of social facts through social institutions. It's the study of social facts through social institutions. So from these various definitions, I believe that by now you do know that sociology has diverse focus. You can't pin it into a particular box, because from the definitions you have seen various definitions telling us that sociology can actually integrate knowledge from various disciplines. So because of the diversity of its focus, we may not really speak of one sociology. So you can really speak of many sociologies because of the multiplicity of the specialties. Also, what will come out from those definitions are that the varied interests of sociologists. So sociologists are interested in a number of subjects, and they can integrate knowledge from various disciplines. They can also benefit from knowledge from various disciplines and contribute to knowledge in various disciplines in a manner, that will lend credence to the fact that there are actually many sociologies rather than one sociology. And the implication of this is that because sociology has many specialties, it further tells you that sociology is not limited in scope. While you find some disciplines are just looking at some narrow areas, sociology actually looks at virtually everything that pertains to social life, just as I said earlier on. And so the many specialties of sociology affirms the opinion that sociologists are actually jack of all trades and they are master of all, whatever they choose to specialize in. And that's why you also find that sociology is often referred to as the queen of the social sciences, because it touches on virtually what each of those disciplines will do and much more. As we begin to go into some of the specialties of sociology, you would actually see that this is true when you talk about the varieties under sociology and the fact that a number of the wide knowledge that is covered under sociology. This is very true. So we're going to try and look at some of the specialties we mention when we talk about sociology. So this tells us that you have a wide array. Now I'll take them one after the other. We're not going to dwell on each one because as we go on, you're going to hear more about some of these aspects of sociology. But just to run through and enable you to see that indeed sociology is wide and there are different aspects that are actually covered. So I've listed a few here. The first one I have here is sociology, sociological theory. And so when we talk about sociological theory, we're referring to the logical framework for analyzing and interpreting social phenomena. We've already agreed that sociology studies human society. So in doing this, it uses a number of theories. So when you talk about the sociological theory, or you're talking about a sociological theory or a particular framework that you use in sociology, you are actually talking about the logical framework, for analyzing and interpreting social phenomena. That's what you are referring to. Then you can also talk about another specialty is gerontology. So the class, as we know, is Introduction to Sociology. So gerontology, social gerontology, some would say sociology of aging. So social gerontology has to do with studies how social cultural factors, including policies, how to influence the process of aging or the experience of aging, either at the individual level or at the societal level. So you find some sociologists whose interests are in social gerontology. So if you find a sociologist who tells you, a social gerontologist, That means that person is interested in studying how sociocultural factors affect aging or the process of aging, or you also call it sociology of aging. So there are people who specialize in that area. I'm sure you also know that there are institutions for the elderly. So when you talk about homes for the elderly, where older people are kept, especially when they do not have families and they can't live with their families, they live in some institutions. All of these are things that are under the purview of sociology. So social gerontology is under the purview of sociology, one of the specialties of sociology. We also have sociology of illness relations, or what you call medical sociology. Sociology of illness relations or medical sociology. Now, what is the primary focus of this? Sociology of illness relations considers how social and cultural factors, how they can influence the experience of illness, they can influence the response to illness, and they can influence even how people perceive and understand and define illness under the sociology of illness relations. So what are those factors that I'm referring to as social cultural factors? Class, for example, the social class of a person, the gender of a person, the religious beliefs of a person or religious affiliation, they all can influence how people define sickness or how they experience sickness. Let me give you an example. If you have somebody who is experiencing a kind of illness now, and the person visits the hospital, and the person is told, oh, this kind of illness would need you to be hospitalized, we need you to have blood transfusion, we need you to have some medical procedures. Now, this person could say, well, because of my beliefs, because of my religion, I do not want to be hospitalized. I do not believe in blood transfusion. So the way this person is going to experience the illness will be different from another person who would say, okay, I want to be hospitalized. I don't have a problem with blood transfusion. My religion doesn't have a problem with this medication. I can take medication. I can be hospitalized, etc. Now, those two different people will have different experience in terms of the illness, because one would perhaps not take the shorter way or the Western or medical way to recovery, not because of anything, but maybe because of the person's religious beliefs. Another one might take a shorter way to recovery because this person doesn't have any prohibition. So their response to illness is being defined by what? It's being defined by certain socio-cultural factors. And there could also be some beliefs, maybe some values that they have, or some beliefs that they should not use certain medication or that they should use certain things. All of these in sociology, you do not take it for granted. You believe that sociocultural factors, including the class of the people, the income, the gender, the religion, Okay, so let me apologize for that. That was due to interruption in the power source. So I was talking about sociology of the illness relations. Please, can you put off your video? Mujid, please, can you use the host right and let people put off their videos so that we can have better quality? Okay. So I was talking about the sociology of illness and illness relations, medical sociology, and I'm sure that we got it as far as I went to. So I'm going to move on to sociology terms that can be used. But what does it do? It actually considers how social relationships and institutions, cultural factors, how they can influence economic behavior. So you find some sociologists who are interested in studying how social relationships, institutions, and cultural factors influence economic behavior. Some call it sociology of work. So if you're interested in studying organizations and looking at how people work, etc., it will be under the sociology of economic life, how people earn their living, their livelihood, etc. Then we have crime and delinquency. Crime and delinquency. This is the study of how social structures, interactions, and cultural factors influence criminal behavior and antisocial acts that are committed by young people. Once you see delinquency, then you know that we're talking about young people, people who have not attained majority. So in sociology, we have a particular specialty that talks about crime and delinquency, and it's studying how social structures and interactions and cultural factors can influence criminal behavior and antisocial acts committed by young people. For example, why would anybody take on particular criminal behavior? Sociologists are interested in knowing those cultural factors that predispose people to engaging in some criminal behavior. Why is it that kidnapping is thriving in Nigeria, for example? What is behind it? What is the motive? Why is it that even they are getting to the point that you can actually negotiate ransom? So you will know that at the end of it is economic. People want to sustain themselves by some criminal activities because it's easier for them to get to do that. And looking at the context in which it happens without sufficient security for people, some individuals can be vulnerable, can be more vulnerable to the experience of kidnapping. So why do people engage in some criminal behaviors? Why do others not engage in those criminal behaviors even when they are exposed to the same factors? So there are a number of factors that can, whether they are cultural factors, social factors, that can actually predispose some to criminal behavior, while some may not fall victim to those criminal behavior. So it's an area of sociology that's also quite interesting. Then we have political sociology. Political sociology has to do with the interdisciplinary, it's an interdisciplinary field that is concerned with how governance and society can interact and influence each other. So you find that there are courses in sociology that you call political sociology that under the, I think it's about 300 or 400 level, but also very interesting looking at the issue of governance in society. And you would already notice that all of these specialties I'm mentioning, you find that they cut across other disciplines and they will be using knowledge from other disciplines merged with
Sorry, ma, we can't hear you, ma. Everyone should relax. She'll be back. I think she has a problem with her network and everything. So relax. She'll be back. Our system is malfunctioning a little, so she'll be back. Just relax. So sorry for the inconvenience. The lecturer's device is malfunctioning a little bit. She'll be back soon, but for now, just let's all relax and don't panic. She'll be back for now.
I apologize again. I think you couldn't hear me because I lost a connection at a point. So I'm back, and we're looking at we're talking about social psychology, how a specialty of sociology, that enables us to look at how mind and behavior influences personal, interpersonal relationships. So now we have another one, which is a sociology of family and marriage. And this studies the family as a social institution, and it analyzes how it's changing structures and functions and dynamics, and how all of these are influenced by broader societal trends like social class, gender, race, history, etc. So you would notice that the family has been changing, in terms of its in terms of the structure. A few things have changed and some are still changing, even in terms of marriage. Globally, there are things that are changing. So sociology of family or sociology of marriage and family enables you to look at these aspects, of social life. Remember that sociology looks at social life in its entirety, but there are those who look at some areas, some special areas. Then we have sociology of law. They also call it law and society. What it does, this is a scientific field that studies the social preconditions of the law and the justice system and how these affect society. Then sociology of development looks at how the social, cultural, political, and institutional factors influence economic development and societal change, particularly when you're looking at the context of developing societies. Then we have other specialties that I may not have mentioned here. Even the few that I've mentioned, these ones that I've mentioned, they're just a few because there are many more. We have demography and population studies. And sociology is not the only field where people study demography, but we also look at it. Demography and population studies, this is where you handle the statistical study of human population and how they change over time, how human population will change either due to birth, due to death, or due to migration. It's also an interesting area of sociology. Then we have urban sociology. Urban sociology talks about or examines cities and urban life and how these affect social behavior, how these affect interaction and other social institutions. For example, when people live in well-planned areas and they have access to basic infrastructure that will make their lives better, and you have those who live in areas that are not well-planned, probably without basic social infrastructure, maybe like in some peri-urban areas or in some slums and things like that, the way these people would relate with other people, their opportunities, their privileges, their constraints they will face will not be the same. So when you talk about social life and you're looking at it from the point of view of urban sociology, you look at how the environment in which these people live, how the cities, how the urban life, how it will affect the lives of the people. Then we have sociology of gender, or what you also call gender studies. This is also very important. This examines the complex interplay, of how men and women relate when you talk about masculinities, femininities, as well as other identity markers. As a construct, gender can be used to mark people's identity, but it's not the only identity marker you can have. Race is an identity marker, your ethnic affiliation, your class, your nationality, etc. But gender is important because it can interconnect with all of these other factors, can interconnect with all of the other identity markers. And so sometimes it can come out as being very complex, but under gender studies, you look at how people relate, in societies, looking at the interplay of masculinities and femininities and how this can affect their opportunities, their constraints, and how they relate in society generally. We also have sociology of religion. Under the sociology of religion, this is where we study beliefs, practices, and all forms of religion or organizational forms of religion, within a social context. How do they influence the people, the practitioners, and how are they influenced by society generally? Also a popular area of sociology, and also very interesting. All of them are really things you can relate with in life, because they are more like things everyone can relate with, because you experience what you are talking about. Then when you talk about applied sociology you might not say it's an area, because it can cut across. It simply means that it's a part where you adapt a practical use of sociological theories. I've mentioned theories before. We also have sociological methods. So in applied sociology, you are using those theories and methods and research findings to address specific problems, to solve real world problems, and to improve social life. So if, for example, we find that in a particular area, people of specific ages, so let's assume 13 to 19 or 21, you find that during school hours, they are hanging out in a particular place, and they are getting involved in maybe drug abuse, or people are using them, recruiting them for criminal activities, etc. That becomes something of interest to sociologists. So in terms of applied sociology, what will happen in that context is that there will be a study finding out some of the reasons why these people are gathered at this place when they should be in school. What is the problem with their families? Are they out of school? Do they have families? Are their families being displaced by one challenge or the other? Whatever findings come out from that study. Now, those findings will be used based on certain sociological theories to address the problem. So a number of institutions will be connected. There may be need to link them with a number of resources in society. Agencies, appropriate agencies to handle the issue of adolescents will come in to ensure that there's an improvement in their lives, whether they're going to be put in the first thing to reconnect with their families where that is possible. Where that is not possible, then they may have to get into certain institutions. That's why you talk about approved school, remand home, this and that, where you have young people who need welfare, who need protection. And so that is applied sociology. That's sociology in action, because right from the research methods, right from the methods that were adopted to study them, up to the findings, and then using those findings to really address the lives of the people so that that problem is solved. That's what you call applied sociology. And you can have applied sociology in all of the genres, all of the specialties I've been mentioning. So that's applied sociology. I mentioned earlier that we have crime and delinquency, but we also have what you call criminology and criminal justice, which is also another aspect. The first one I mentioned had to do with juvenile delinquency, crime and juvenile delinquency, where you're looking at the young people who are involved in some misdemeanor, some activities that they should not be engaging in. But when you talk about criminology and criminal justice, you're talking about the scientific study of crime, including causes. Why do people commit crime? How are the laws made? How are the laws broken? What is society's reaction when people break laws, etc.? Are there sanctions? Are the sanctions effective? So that's also an interesting aspect of sociology. Then we have sociology of sports and recreation, where you study sports as a social phenomena, examining how sports can reflect and influence cultural values, how sports can influence social relationships, and how sports can also interrelate with other things like politics. You hear when some countries do not have, if they have diplomatic relations that are not good, then they will say, oh, this country might not be able to go to another country for sporting activities, or will ban athletes from this country. Recently, I was listening to the news, and the news item was saying that people from a particular, I think it was from South Africa, that the athletes were not given visa to the US because of certain diplomatic issues between South Africa and US government. I mean, that comes under sociology of sports, because you are looking at how sports, even as a social phenomenon, is now interacting with politics, and international relations. It's also very interesting. Then you have sociology of industry, industrial sociology, where you talk about how industrial workplace structures, how they can influence social interactions or inequality and broader societal dynamics. And I think I've not put some, like sociology of knowledge, which is something else. We also talked about how human thoughts and ideas and belief systems, how they are shaped by the society, particularly by specific social contexts and structures. Then you have rural sociology. Rural sociology is also a scientific study, of social structures, relationships, and problems, particularly within rural or non-urban communities. So just to leave that issue, because I've spent a lot of time going in and coming out. So let me leave that area of specialties and move on to something else. Now, another thing we can look at immediately today, while we're still looking at introduction, is to look at the emergence of sociology and take a historical perspective. How did sociology emanate? And the emergence of sociology is actually linked with three major events that I can mention. The Age of Enlightenment, from late 17th century to early 18th century. We also can talk about the first industrial revolution, and the French Revolution. They are connected. I'm going to get to how they are connected, at the end, but I just want to take them one after the other so that we can see, and at the end, see how they become related to the emergence of sociology. So let's talk about the Age of Enlightenment first. Even though we might not be able to precisely put a date to the emergence of sociology, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to trace its beginning, the beginning of sociology, to I've said you can trace it to three major events. What some would say they are revolutions or political or agitations that have happened, but there are three that I'm particularly talking about, which is the Age of Enlightenment, the First Industrial Revolution. We know that there were other industrial revolutions, and then the French Revolution. So let's start with the Age of Enlightenment. For those who might be hearing it for the first time, the Age of Enlightenment is more like an intellectual movement, that happened, as I said, from the late 17th century to the early 18th century. It was more like a period that emphasized reason, a period that emphasized science over what had been happening at that time with traditional authority. But when the Age of Enlightenment started, there was a shift in thinking. And then if you look at other things that happened within that period, it led to a lot of changes. But for the Age of Enlightenment, which we also call the Age of Reasoning, the key thing was that people now started to emphasize reasoning, that superstition should not have its way again. So those you call Enlightenment thinkers, they started to reject superstition, and blind faith. Started to assert that people could use critical thinking to solve problems of society. So these are some of the key tenets of the Enlightenment period, that there was an emphasis on reasoning. It was also called the age of reasoning. There was emphasis on the rights of the individual. So during the Enlightenment, there was a new idea of individual autonomy, that the individuals also have rights, that individuals have rights. And if you compare this to what was happening before the Enlightenment age, you had the feudal system where some people were lords and some were serfs. So the lords are those that controlled, all the resources. The serfs were like servants, and they sustained this relationship through a lot of superstitions and beliefs, etc. But when the age of reasoning started, the belief was changing, that there's a kind of shift to the fact that human beings are reasonable, they have the capacity for rational thought, and that science could help to advance society. And so you should just leave superstitions behind and allow the individual to progress by critical thinking. So there was that belief in progress, and then there was a questioning of tradition, because hitherto, that was before that time, the authority of the church was almost unchallenged. The authority also of the monarchy. So you had kings, you had the royal families that were like the final authority. But when the age of enlightenment came, so there was a questioning of tradition, there was a questioning of the monarchy and things like that. And so scholars at that time, the intellectuals at that time, were key thinkers of the early age of enlightenment. They started to talk about the rights of the individual, the fact that government was, whether it was a monarchical government or whatever, that they were just representing the people. And so it was that time that the questioning of authority started, questioning of tradition started, and there was a more developed inclination towards scientific approach to life, towards a more secular approach to life, so that religion that had the foothold at that time, it was not beginning to question religion and to displace religion from the central position, to ensure that people can actually expand, their minds, enlarge their thinking by going scientific. So the belief that the same scientific laws, that scientists have used to be improving society, gradually in terms of the development, that this same scientific thinking could actually help to develop society. So it was at the age of the Enlightenment that you have what you call the birth of the positivist or positivism. I'll come to that. I will mention that when I'm talking about Auguste Comte later, but just to drop the hint that it was during this period of Enlightenment that we have a new strong belief, in science and the development of science, that the capacity that science can be used to study society, and which is what eventually led to sociology. Remember, we're just looking at some of the historical background that led us to the development of sociology. And I mentioned that there are three related events: the Age of Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and the French Revolution. So I just finished talking about the Age of Enlightenment, telling us that it was the age of reason, also called the Age of Reasoning, where people started to question tradition and religion, and where the belief in the centrality of the individual and the rights of the individual gained ground. And I've said that we're still going to link it with the emergence of sociology, but I mentioned the scientific study of society, that the positivists, that was the beginning, of positivism, where people believe that you could actually study society with scientific methods, just like the scientists were also doing their study. So, but this happened at this time, the Industrial Revolution too. So imagine that the Age of Enlightenment had happened and was still happening, and then you had the Industrial Revolution happening just about the same time, 1750 to 1830. So that's within the 18th century to the 19th century. So what happened at this particular time is that there was also a massive shift, in society, including at this time urbanization. So once urbanization started, they had new forms of labor, new forms of economic disparity. So to put it in a very simple way, when the Industrial Revolution started, it led to increased production. So there was a transformation from agrarian economy and handicraft economy, which people were just using their hands to make things, and there was a lot of dependence on agriculture, etc. But when the Industrial Revolution started, there was machine manufacturing. So which meant that you could produce things in larger number more. So this led to increased production. Then prices fell, you have lower prices. Then cities started to grow. But this had its own negative consequences. The urbanization that happened, the new forms of labor that happened, it had negative consequences. It led to its own social problems. And what are those problems that came? People were migrating. So you had a rural-urban migration intensified. Everybody wanted to work in the factories. They wanted to work where the production was happening. And the factories also needed people. They needed people to come operate the machines. So you find rural-urban migration without proper planning in the cities. So the cities were like bursting at the seams. People went into the cities that were not planned, that were not properly planned. And so you had overcrowding, overpopulation in the cities. Overpopulation also will lead to poor sanitary conditions, environmental problems in the cities. Everyone wanted to work within the factories because of the benefits that were coming out of it. And so even families were affected. Families were not together again, they were disintegrating because even children were taken to work in the factories because everybody wanted to earn and wanted to live within the city. So it was affecting the family structure, was affecting the community structure. And what will happen once you have overcrowding and you have a place where you do not have sufficient infrastructure? Poverty started in spite of the wages people thought they were receiving in the factories. There was poverty, there was crime, the people were alienated, kind of. So fresh problems came in society as people were migrating from the rural areas to the urban areas. The Industrial Revolution has its own consequences, coupled with the fact that the Age of Enlightenment has started questioning of traditional authority, has started questioning of the church and things like that, and the emphasis on the individual rights, etc. So these some of the things that happened within the first industrial revolution. Now, as this was still going on, we now had the French Revolution. Now, the Industrial Revolution is taking place, in Europe. The French Revolution also now started from 1789 to 1799, and it came with its own problems. All the ideals of the Enlightenment age. Remember that the idea of individual rights, equality, liberty, everything came from the Age of Enlightenment. Now that was still going on. The Industrial Revolution came. Now the French Revolution kind of took in all of these ideas were still there, trying to overturn the feudal system. I mentioned that the feudal system that made some people perpetual, serfs, while some were lords. And there was already a kind of agitation and rising against this feudal system. So all these disruptions that were going on, the thinkers at that time, the intellectuals, were already thinking of the problem in society where, there were many and were wondering how this could be solved. Particularly that French Revolution brought in political upheaval in France, brought in social upheaval, also connected with the overthrow of the monarchy and the feudal system. And part of the things that motivated this French Revolution was the social inequality that was happening at that time, the economic hardship that was happening, and led to this French Revolution. And so when the revolution happened, those who were perceived as enemies of the revolution, they were executed. So there was a lot of executed, thousands of people were executed. And the idea of the right of the individual, right of speech, individual rights, later on they became known as human rights. All of this came up. And so as a result of that revolution, there were lots and lots of chaos and disorder in society. So how does all of these now link with sociology? Remember, we were looking at the emergence of sociology, and we said we needed to do some kind of background to look at how they led to the emergence of sociology. So when all these activities were taking place and there was a lot of disorder, in society, and there was chaos in society, what happened was that the intellectuals at that time, thinking of how to get solution to some of the problems in society. So you can look at the three periods, the three events that I've mentioned, how they now led to sociology. So the ideas of the Enlightenment period, they created the intellectual groundwork, for sociology. And how did this happen? Maybe like in two major ways: by promoting a scientific worldview, and then by generating new, looking at how these social problems can be solved through intellectually. So there is the scientific approach to study society. And the idea was that if natural sciences had been able to study the physical world, and they have been able to come up with some solutions for some of the problems that were happening there, what about the social world? So the Enlightenment thinkers just thought, okay, we can also apply the same empirical methods, the same rational methods to the study of human society. And so this was what laid the foundation for sociology as a scientific discipline. Then I'd mentioned the name of Auguste Comte before. I'm mentioning it again because we refer to Auguste Comte as the father of sociology. We're still going to look at all those founding fathers of sociology. But the birth of positivism is what actually led to the emergence, of sociology at this time, because Auguste Comte was considered, who's been considered that the founding father of sociology. He was particularly influenced by the Enlightenment thoughts. He also envisioned sociology as a positivist science, something that can help to discover the laws that can govern society, the laws that can govern human social life. So he kind of believed that if order could be restored in society, if we had a better understanding of society. Remember that those three major events that we've mentioned, we said that they have led to chaos, they have led to breakdown of law and order in society. There have been the revolution, there have been the execution of people, there have been a lot of other social problems that have come out of that particular experience. So he believed that if we had an understanding so he believed that if we had an understanding of how society worked, then it would be possible to restore order. So he was interested in how society could become orderly again. So he believed that a scientific approach, rather than theological approach or philosophical approach, would achieve a better understanding of society. So these belief that he had and these new science that he was talking about, this new science of society that he was talking about, he named it, he called it social physics. Social physics. That was what he first called it. Let me go on to the next slide. But then he had to change the term because somebody else had used that term. So to put it in proper perspective, Auguste Comte thought of a science of society. So his idea was that the same way that natural scientists have been able to change the physical world, that we could also deal with the social world and bring back order to society if we can understand how society works. If you understand how society works, then we might be able to use this science of society to restore order to society. So he believed that that restoration of order will come when there is an understanding of how society works. And because we also believe that he's the one who was greatly influenced by the Enlightenment age and believed that this scientific approach will work for society rather than a theological approach. Remember that there had already been a resistance against the church, against religion at that time, and that even the philosophical approach may not work. That is a scientific approach that I believe will work for society. So he called this new science of society, he called it social physics. Social physics, that was the first term he used, thinking about this new science of society. But then he had to change the term social physics when he discovered that earlier on, a Belgian scholar, Adolphe Quetelet, is from the French-speaking side of Belgium, that he had already used the term social physics. And so Auguste Comte felt, no, let me not use social physics again because somebody else had used the idea of social physics. So Comte now switched to the concept, to the term sociology. That was how the term emerged. And the belief is that as a science, that sociology would help to solve the problems of society at that time. Remember that the problems at that time were problems of the revolutions that we had, problems of war, problems of inequality, problems of crime, and problems of poverty. So that's how it came to pass that Auguste Comte used this particular concept of sociology. So we're going to also look at, now Auguste Comte, because on our outline, we're supposed to also look at the various fathers of sociology, that the founding fathers, those who were responsible for sociology from its emergence. So the first name is always Auguste Comte. Auguste Comte from 1798 to 1857, that's the period in which he lived. So he has been the one credited with the introduction of the word sociology. Now I've told us how it came about that he first used social physics and then changed to sociology. So the term sociology, he first used in a series of lecture courses that he gave as part of the early philosophers and thinkers, was gave series of lectures and put them together and published a book. The book is called the Course of Positive Philosophy. I'll still give us a slide maybe in the next class to show us that, to show off this particular part that I'm talking about as a revision. But it gave, resulted in the publication of a book, which is called the Course of Positive Philosophy. But there are also arguments that even though he used the word sociology in the lectures he gave, and eventually in the publication of the book, it's believed that the term sociology had actually been earlier used by an essayist, a French essayist called Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès, that he had first of all used the term sociology, but his own manuscript was unpublished. So, you know, if you want to cite an authority, it has to be a published work. But Auguste Comte published his own in a book called The Course of Positive Philosophy. He used that concept. But, you know, research showed that he had some earlier scholars had used the word sociology even before Auguste Comte. But because his own was the first published work, he's the one who is credited with the term sociology and referred to as the founding father of sociology. In fact, research also shows that even before the coinage of the term, that there are scholars who have expressed what you might call sociological thoughts in their writings. For example, there's a scholar called Ibn Khaldun, Abu Zaid Ibn Khaldun. He was said to have expressed sociological thoughts, though he did not refer to it as sociology, you know, but within that period of the crisis, he was committed to look for some solutions. You know, what are the causes of certain social phenomena in society? Why are there certain things that are happening in society? So all of these are all sociological thoughts, but he did not use that word sociology. But some school of thought will argue that he actually started, he pioneered this kind of study of society, and that it should actually be the true father of sociology. We've had scholars who have argued that way, that Ibn Khaldun had written before Auguste Comte even became known, and that even though he did not use the term, the concept of sociology, all that he was talking about would actually come under the rubric of sociology. So I'm taking the time to give you some of these steps so that it's not confusing to those who have never heard anything about sociology before, about the emergence of, some of you could have heard before, but many might not have heard before. And for sociology students, they will still continue with some of these in other courses. But for those who may not be sociology students, but for whom introductory sociology is compulsory, it's good that you have an understanding that Auguste Comte is called the founding father of sociology because he used that concept, first of all, and used it in a publication in the book that he had published before, The Course of Positive Philosophy, because it was influenced by the idea of positivism that came around during the period of Enlightenment. But the argument is that other people had also used it, but for Emmanuel Sieyès, his work was not published. It was in an unpublished manuscript, so he could not get credit for it. But Auguste Comte's own was published. And then others said that Abu Zaid Ibn Khaldun, because he had lived around the 12th century, you know, the 13th century, but he had lived earlier, and that, but he didn't use the term sociology, but he had expressed sociological thoughts, which some believe that if you were going to trace it back, really, it would qualify to be one of the founding fathers of sociology. So we also have other intellectuals and philosophers that have actually theorized about the social basis of human behavior. That quite a number of them, some of them are contemporaries of Auguste Comte, like G.S. Mill. G.S. Mill, for example, he used the word sociology after Comte had used it. He sanctioned many of the things that Comte had agreed on or that Comte had said, and then he took it into his own society, took it into Germany, and then examined the positive philosophy that Auguste Comte was talking about. We also have people like Herbert Spencer, who have also adopted the word and used it more significantly. Spencer, for example, had a book that he called The Study of Sociology. So if you say that somebody actually wrote particularly on sociology, the first book with the term sociology, that was Herbert Spencer, who who published the first book using the term sociology in the title, and he won recognition for it. But Spencer is also one of the founding fathers. He won recognition for it, and the book became very popular for between 1870 and 1890. It was like the most popular book talking about sociology. But you will know that he was not the one who used the term first. He endorsed the term as used by Auguste Comte, but he was the first to use the term in his own book. So we have another scholar, Harriet Martineau. Harriet Martineau is actually an English sociologist. And what did she do? She translated the work of Auguste Comte to English. Translated what Auguste Comte's work was in French. So he translated the work of Auguste Comte to English. And that gave the work more publicity. So she also had credit for, when she translated the work of Comte, published a sociological treatise, and that gave her some credit. She's also one of the founders of sociology. And in fact, the first woman sociologist that was recognized. And some will refer to her as the mother of sociology, whereas you call Auguste Comte the father of sociology. So others believe that the role of some people who had been like mentors, to Auguste Comte also deserve some acknowledgement. That Auguste Comte, for example, had a mentor, was Saint Simon, and that Saint Simon would have influenced Auguste Comte in his writings. Saint Simon was the one who developed the concept of la scientifique politique, was also French. That he suggested that when you look at scientific disciplines, that the most complex of all scientific disciplines will be the one that is dealing with understanding human behavior, or dealing with trying to understand human social behavior, because other things you study, they do not have minds of their own. So if you are studying atoms, you are studying all kinds of things, even animals. But when you're studying human beings, it's really very difficult, because human beings can pretend. You can be asking, you want to study somebody, or you're studying a particular community, and once they are aware that you're studying them, they actually can pretend. So it says it's very difficult to study human behavior, and that the most complex of all scientific disciplines is that which will be dealing with understanding human social behavior. And so one of the methods that was used in studying the history of the discipline of sociology is by looking at the biographies of those who had contributed to that study. So we're going to be looking at, not today, maybe in the next class, we'll begin to look at some of the just very brief biographies of those who have contributed to the development of sociology. So we can look at their, definitely would mention Comte again. We might not dwell on him because we have dwelt on Auguste Comte, but we're going to look at some other founding fathers, Emile Durkheim, Max Weber, Karl Marx, and the rest of them. We're going to be looking at them in a bit details, so that gives us an idea of what they have done, towards sociology, and the kind of contributions that they have made to the study of sociology. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I hope we put our names in the chat box. So if you didn't do that, as a way of registering your attendance, please. Oh, I see that somebody was asking a question about, he said something about who wrote a book with the word sociology. It was Herbert Spencer. I think the person said did not get the first name of that person. We're still going to talk about them. We're still going to talk about some of the founding fathers. So the one that wrote a book that you had the title of sociology, said the study of sociology. That's the first book written with the term sociology. That was Herbert Spencer. Herbert, as in Herbert. So Spencer is a surname. I'm just going through some of the questions and comments that people have given in the chat box. So that's where I saw the question. I don't think we have any other question. So in the next class, we'll look at a bit of the contributions of the founding fathers of sociology to, oh yes, for recommended text. Thank you, that's a good question. I thought you were given an outline. I don't know if you were given an outline like a course outline. There are recommended texts. Let me see if I can quickly find that outline on my laptop and see. Let me check for the, I'm trying to check for the, I could also share the slides if you are, for those who may be interested. And I'm trying to go to, okay. Oh, okay. I've seen the outline. I don't know if it was shared with, I don't know if it was shared with your class or with your class governor. It doesn't have, this one that I have here, it says it's a revised work plan. It doesn't have the recommended text, but we have a sociology for beginners. That's the text. Sociology for beginners, I believe you can get it in the bookshop or from booksellers around on campus or elsewhere you can get it. And any basic text that is introductory sociology will be good. You can read any basic introductory text. That would also be good. So that's another question that I saw. Okay, somebody's asking, is this the first class? Yes, this is the first class and it's an introductory class. And what we have just done is to look at the scope of sociology. We have looked at definition of sociology, all the areas, specialties under sociology, and the emergence. How did sociology come to be? We looked at the three key related events, the Age of Enlightenment, the first industrial revolution, the French Revolution, and how it led to the emergence of sociology. So this is not a second class, this is the very first class. I'm the first person taking the course, and other colleagues will take subsequent. Perhaps I think I'm going to come to the next class so that we can finish up on the founding fathers. Olariwaju Daniel says, technically, this is the third. There's no technically anywhere. This is the first class. This is the first class. And many of you do not have accommodation yet, but the university does not want the students not to do something. So that's why the class is online. It will not be fair to have a physical class now when many of the students do not have a means of getting to campus yet. So technically and non-technically, this is the very first class. So Mujib, who is the class rep that we made a co-host, I hope you can hear that, and please pass it on to other people. You did not miss any class. We have not had a class. I will can make this available, make the slides available for you. But these are things that you also can read up, in the text. In any basic introductory text, you would find all of this that we have said there. Well, somebody said she was unable to see my screen. Sorry, maybe that was the time I got thrown off. You missed a number of things, but some of these will come out later that you'll be able to get, because I'll give the slides and then I'll also give a slides for the founding fathers. So we'll just be telling you the key things. You can read up the rest, but it's important that we, I'm so sorry. Some said they were not able to see the shared screen. So don't worry, I'll share the slides so that you can share with your colleagues, and that will be useful. But these are basic things that you probably can even find most of the information given to you in any basic textbook. Don't despair. It's wide. There is a lot you're going to do, and there are many people coming to take you. But it's very interesting, and it's not difficult, particularly if you are able to lay your hands on a basic text and you read along as we do. Okay, somebody's asking me to do a recap. A recap will take time, but what we have done basically, I think is Leonard asking for a recap and tips on how you can, beside the textbooks, the tips is ensure that you attend class. I'm sure that some classes will be physical, in-person classes. It's just a few classes until you are done with what you're doing. I'm not sure you have even started orientation. So until you are done with some of the things that will take many of you away, that's why we are having online class. Online class may not be more than the initial couple of classes that will start for you. So you still have physical class, but whether they are in-person classes, whether they are physical classes, what is essential is that ensure that you attend the classes. Ensure that you attend the classes. When you attend the classes, ensure that you do not distract yourself or distract others. You know, we believe that when people attend classes like this, it's always good to attend with your name, you know, because when you're recording and something happens and somebody said, I was in this class, I was not there. The recording, recording, I'm not talking about recording the lecture itself, but your own recording, the recording of the attendance. Also, so somebody says Zoom user. You can't prove anything by Zoom user or iPhone, whatever. Who is that? But when I look at the name, this is Precious. I can see the name. I can see the first name, second name. I can see Osereme, Alenke. The person can say, oh yeah, I was in class. I can check and see that he or she was there. I can see Jennifer Komalafe. I can see the name. Even for higher classes, you see them use their names and their matric numbers, because everybody wants to show that, oh, I was in class, I attended 65% of my class. So not like putting Zoom user or iPhone user. That's not the proper way to come to class. So when you come to class, you name yourself properly, because somebody is asking for hints. That's why I'm giving you some of the tips. So you name yourself properly and you listen. You can make your jottings, apart from the fact that you read we'll make the text recommended, the list available for you. So you read them. You have information. This is the age that you have lots of information. I'm sure you can even find ebooks that you can read online, but there are also recommended texts that you see the list and it'll be given to you. So these are the ways to ensure that you do well, because you attend the classes. If there are assignments given, you ensure that you do them. If you have tests it's possible to have tests online on the LMS, on the platform. You make sure that you come in within the period that is given to you and you do the test quickly. And of course, there's going to be recording and evidence that you came in within. It could be a 20 minutes test and you have like a window of 2 hours when different people can come do the test. So it will record when you came in to do your own and you are gone. So, but for those who might be like lackadaisical, you may want to come in the last few minutes when the place is crowded and you might have a problem on the platform. So it's always good to do whatever you are asked to do on time. So as for recap of today is that we looked at sociology as a field that is quite diverse. I started by giving you real life headlines from newspapers talking about some problems. And I said that these problems are all within the sociological realm. They are things that sociologists are interested in. So we talked about the diversity of sociology. We looked at some definitions, gave a number of definitions from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars in other parts of society. And then we looked at the different specialties in sociology, quite a number of them. I'm sure I must have mentioned up to like 20 of them or more than, from sociological theory to social gerontology, sociology of law, sociology of development. I didn't even mention sociology of communication. I didn't mention sociology of knowledge. There are quite a number, but you see those. So we mentioned them and telling us some of the things, the focus of all of these areas, ending the fact that sociologists use the entire world as their laboratory, because sociology cuts across every area of social life. So somebody once said that there is sociology of everything. I even mentioned sports and recreation. So there's no aspect of social life that you want to look at that you cannot study how the social structures or the social cultural factors affect how people relate or people behave within that sphere and how it affects other people. So it's a very wide field, but nonetheless, you can look at specific areas. Then we went to look at historical background to see what led to the emergence. I mentioned the Age of Enlightenment, when people started to question traditional authority, and it's also called the Age of Reasoning, where people begin to think that the individual should take center stage, the individual has autonomy and have rights. At that time, there was no word, human rights hadn't come into vogue, but eventually all of these rights became what you refer to as human rights, but they were just talking about the right of the persons, the belief in progress, and that you could question the authority of the church, because at that time, religion was strong, the church was very strong when you look at the, in terms of governance and in terms of as an institution. So there was that resistance against monarchy, etc. And I said that while that was going on, that the Industrial Revolution also came and started its own massive shifts, in society, led to increased production, manufacturing, etc. Even though production increased, but there were lower prices, people could get things easily compared with the time when it was handicraft economy, the agrarian economy. So the economy kind of changed. You had machine manufacturing, etc. But that it came with its own problems. And I mentioned that some of the problems that it came with was the problem of rural-urban migration, and that the cities were not planned and became overcrowded, overpopulated. There was poor sanitary conditions, environmental conditions, led to its own problem again, crime, violence, and things like that. And while all this was going on, the French Revolution also started. Using all of these ideas of liberty, ideas of equality that have started since the age of the Enlightenment. So these three important events, influenced the intellectuals at that time when they were looking at, okay, the chaos in society, how can we restore order to society? How can we improve society? How can we bring about change, from all of these societal problems that we have? And I said that one of those earlier thinkers who was influenced by the Enlightenment period was Auguste Comte, because at that period too, he was also envisioning a science of society, that can help bring order into society, just as the natural scientists had improved the physical world. How can we also improve the social world? How can order be restored? And that was what gave birth to positivism. And it's this idea of positivism, it's talking about the use of science to be able to address society, or to be able to address social life. So all of these things taking place, just became like a foundation, for sociology. Even though at that time we said that some people had already talked about social life at that time, but did not use that term sociology. Did not use it, but this was what led to the emergence. So we said that Auguste Comte, first of all, used the word social physics, first used the phrase social physics to describe the science of society that he was talking about, and that he dropped that term social physics because somebody else had used it earlier, and then he used the word sociology. And I told you that looking back, you found that others had used sociology, but because their own work was not published, so it was Auguste Comte's work that was published, and so he got the credit for using that concept sociology in his work that was published. So there were also earlier thinkers who were thought to have really spoken to sociological ideas or sociological thoughts, but they did not use those words. But I'm going to talk to those founding fathers, talk about them, and I'll give you slides also on them, just to let you know what they contributed to sociology. We'll do that in the next class before others will also take over the class. So thank you. I think I have answered some of the questions I have found here. So enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.